My name is Sarah, I'm 38, and I'm a single mom. It's the sentence I repeat every time someone new asks me about my story. It's short, straightforward, but behind it lies an ocean of pain, of sleepless nights, of broken dreams and quiet triumphs that only my son and I truly know. I never thought I'd end up alone. At 24, I married Adam, a charming, slightly naive man with warm hands and a breathtaking smile. We met during a college teaching seminar. I was teaching English literature. He taught American history. We had plans: a little house upstate, 2 kids, summer road trips to national parks. I truly believe we loved each other. But when Nick, our son, arrived, everything shifted. At first, it was just Adam's anxious glances when he couldn't calm the baby. Then came the distance. He said he was tired, that he hadn't expected it to be this hard, and one morning he just didn't come home. He left a note on the kitchen table, and his keys. I remember that day like a still photograph: a heavy gray sky, the relentless rain, the smell of oatmeal I was trying to cook between feedings and rocking Nick to sleep, and the emptiness. In the hallway, in the bed, inside me. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. The baby was asleep, so I just sat on the floor and stared at my bare feet. That was the beginning. The beginning of a life with no space for romance, no room for plans, not even room for me. I learned how to survive, waking every hour at night because Nick had colic, working from home, editing student papers, writing short essays, sometimes ghostwriting for strangers' social media, eating whatever was left on Nick's plate because groceries were a luxury, and smiling, always smiling, because moms are supposed to be strong. Eventually, we moved. A tiny studio apartment in a sleepy neighborhood with paper-thin walls and windows that never quite cleared. But it was ours, me and Nick. Nick taught me how to love again. His eyes, just like Adam's, but his gaze, that was mine. Steady, unshakable. He was my dawn, even when the night felt endless. Time passed. I didn't track it by calendar dates, but by Nick's baby teeth, his first steps, the nights without a fever, his first words. His very first word was ma. Not mama, just ma. It came out somewhere between a cough and a giggle as I rocked him to sleep. And in that one syllable was everything: my name, my purpose, my whole heart. I cried then, openly, unashamed. Every milestone in his life felt like a new chapter in mine. When he learned to sit, I realized I could handle the daily chaos without losing myself. When he began walking, I returned to the world, slowly, one park bench at a time. When he began talking, I started writing more. My writing deepened, became braver. I wrote about fear, about loneliness, about the kind of exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. And people started reading. At first, moms in online forums. Then editors of women's magazines. Eventually, small publishers took notice. As Nick grew, so did my belief in myself. I wasn't just a mom anymore. I was becoming a woman again, with wounds, yes, but also with strength. For the first time in years, I looked in the mirror and saw someone human staring back. Sometimes, when Nick fell asleep early, I'd light a candle and write into the night, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I found my voice again, and in doing so, I found myself. But life wasn't suddenly easy. The money was still tight, the fear never truly left. Each time Nick coughed, I checked to see if he was breathing. I woke in the night at phantom sounds, and I carried this heavy guilt that I couldn't give him everything. That other kids had 2 parents, 2 incomes, bigger bedrooms, weekend trips to the zoo, and my son, he had only me. And then one morning he looked at me and said, "Mom, you're the best in the world." I don't know where he heard it, maybe a cartoon, but to me it felt like a benediction, like recognition, and I told myself we're going to be okay. Life didn't suddenly flip like a switch. This wasn't a movie, but little by little I built our world. No matter how hard it was ours. When Nick turned 4, I left him with a babysitter for a few hours for the first time ever. It was more than a break, it was a dare to myself. I sat in a cafe with my laptop, tight in the chest, listening for any hint of a child crying, but there was no cry. Nick was safe, and I was writing, not tiptoeing at night, not squeezing words between feedings, just a woman at a cafe writing her truth, unapologetically. That essay about motherhood as both loss and rebirth became my most read piece ever. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I wrote that being a mother is painful. It's letting go of freedom, of sleep, of illusions, but it's also a new kind of intimacy with yourself. Hundreds of women shared that post. Some wrote me letters. Others just left a simple, "Thank you." For the first time in a long time, I felt it. I'm not alone. There are thousands of us with our stories, our heartbreaks, our quiet victories. And we hold each other through words, through empathy, through that simple "I see you." That's when I started thinking about a book. For the first time since college, I didn't just dream, I planned. In the evenings, I filled a notebook with ideas. It wasn't easy. Nick got sick a lot, money was inconsistent, but something inside me had shifted. Instead of saying I have to survive, I started saying I deserve more. I bought a new journal. On the cover I wrote, "Don't you dare laugh at this." Because I'd shelved too many dreams too many times. This time, no. Inside were little dreams: buy Nick a bike, new books for me, a weekend away. And bigger ones: publish a book, be heard. Sometimes I'd reread those lines in the middle of the night and cry. But not from pain, from the fact that I still dared to dream. That despite it all, I still believed. When Nick started preschool, my days stretched out. The silence at home became loud, almost aching. I had more time to work, to write, but also more time to think. And in that space, the loneliness I had buried beneath years of mothering began to surface. I found myself thinking of Adam, not with anger, not even pain, just a distant kind of sadness. He never reached out, not once. Sometimes I'd search his name online. I'd find traces, a new job, photos with friends, but never a mention of Nick. It hurt, but it didn't destroy me anymore. I had learned to forgive not for him, but for me. Sometimes I wondered, will he ever regret it? Will he ever remember the nights we rocked Nick together before he disappeared? One day, I spent an afternoon in the library, working on a chapter of the book, no longer just a dream, but a goal. Nearby, an older woman sat with a young girl, her granddaughter, I assumed. The girl reminded me of Nick, curious, soft-voiced, full of why. We exchanged a few words. And for the first time in ages, I felt I could talk about more than my son. We talked about books, about old movies, about coffee. I had forgotten what it was like to be in a grown-up conversation that didn't begin with "Mom." After that, I let myself enjoy little things again. A slow cup of coffee, a walk with no destination, soft music in the background, no guilt, just returning to myself. Nick was growing fast. Sometimes I'd spot traits in him I hadn't seen before: his own humor, his own taste in things. He was becoming his own person. And every smile he gave me felt like a reward, but also a reminder time flies. He'll grow up, and one day it'll just be me again. And that no longer scares me like it used to, because now I know I'll be okay. It was an autumn afternoon, that sweet in-between time when the trees are half-clothed and the leaves already crunch beneath your feet, when I met Rachel. She was a little younger than me, bright-eyed, holding a book. We were at the playground. Her daughter, Ella, ran near the swings, and Nick was reading aloud a passage from his favorite book. We both smiled, that soft, involuntary kind of smile you get when a child's voice speaks wiser than its years. At first, we exchanged only pleasantries: weather, books, coffee from the little mobile truck nearby. But by the second meeting, the conversation had gone deeper. With each new encounter, it lingered longer, grew warmer, more real. Something inside me reached toward her like it remembered her. Like kin. I hadn't allowed myself to open up to women in years. In the lonely world of single motherhood, trust can feel like a risk you no longer afford. But with her, it was easy. She listened, truly listened. No advice, no comparisons, just presence. Our children clicked instantly. Ella, a little younger than Nick, clung to his side as though they'd known each other forever. They shared cookies, built sandcastles, walked hand in hand like little old souls. And sometimes I'd catch a flicker, a strange familiarity in how they moved, how they tilted their heads in thought. The same smile, the same eyes. It was subtle, but it tugged at something deep inside me. One afternoon, I went to Rachel's for tea. Ella came bounding out with a photo in her tiny hands. "This is my dad," she said proudly, and there he was, Adam, my Adam. The man who vanished, who left nothing but a note on the kitchen table and a set of keys. His eyes stared back at me from the photo, unchanged, yet part of another life now. A life I was never meant to see. I froze, my heart slammed into my throat. My hands went clammy, but I smiled. I said, "He's very handsome," and nothing more. Rachel didn't notice. She poured tea, chatted about Ella's school. I didn't hear a word. All I could think was, he's here, he's close, and no one knows. That night, walking home with Nick, he said, "Mom, I think I love Ella. She's my best friend." And I couldn't say a word. I wanted to scream, to protect him with the truth. But how do you tell your son that the girl he loves might be his sister, that her dad is the ghost who left us? I didn't sleep. I stood by the window and watched the dark pulse outside under flickering streetlights, asking the same question over and over. What do I do now? I couldn't run forever. The next Saturday, Rachel invited us to a family picnic in the park. "Adam's coming," she said with a soft smile. "Finally, a moment when we can all talk, no rush, no distractions." I nodded, smiled, and spent the entire week walking on glass. I rehearsed lines in my head, imagined every possible reaction, how to keep the storm inside from spilling out. But no plan made sense. The day arrived, warm, almost inappropriately so for October. The air smelled like apples and worn denim. Nick and I came early. I sat on the picnic blanket watching the kids play, counting my breaths, and then he appeared. Walking across the grass with a picnic basket. His face had aged, deeper lines, darker shadows beneath his eyes, but I knew him instantly. And he saw me. He stopped, just for a moment. Time paused, our eyes locked. The same eyes, but not mine anymore. He walked up and said, "Hey," like it was nothing, like we hadn't lived another life together. I said, "Hey," back. Rachel didn't notice a thing. She laid out cups, poured lemonade, and talked about apple crisps. I heard nothing but the blood drumming in my ears. Nick and Ella laughed nearby, their fingers intertwined. And in that moment, the resemblance was no longer subtle. It was a thread, a shared history, a truth I couldn't say out loud. I couldn't tell Rachel or Nick. How could I shatter a world that wasn't mine to break? What if Adam denied it all? What if he said I was delusional? Or worse, what if he just walked away again? That night I wrote a letter. Not to him, to myself. I wrote that the anger had left me, that I'd forgiven, but I wasn't obligated to stay silent forever. One day I would tell the truth when I could be sure it wouldn't break them, because none of this was their fault. So for now I'd protect their world, even if it cost me mine. The months that followed blurred. Rachel and I saw each other weekly. Dinners, walks, shared laughter over lukewarm tea. I played along. But inside, something splintered a little more each time. Every picnic, every conversation. Every time I saw Adam wrap his arm around Rachel or lift Ella into the sky like a perfect father, I saw the life that could have been mine. That should have been mine. I became a ghost in my own story, watching from the edges, silently pressing my face to the glass. And every night, once Nick fell asleep, I cried into my pillow, quietly, not in sobs, but in that aching way where pain has settled too deep to scream. Then I'd wake, stitch myself back together, and carry on like nothing was wrong. Rachel glowed. She didn't know, and I didn't have the heart or the right to tell her, to question the man she trusted, to dismantle the family she built. And yes, I was scared, that she wouldn't believe me, that she would, that either way I would lose her. One night, sitting at her kitchen table, I broke a little. "Do you ever think," I asked, "that fate can be cruel, that it takes everything from you and gives it to someone else and then makes you watch?" She paused, smiled sadly. "Maybe," she said, "but I think it just distributes things differently." I said nothing, just nodded. And in that nod lived everything, my silence, my sorrow, my unfinished story. I didn't know what came next, only that I couldn't stay quiet forever. That day was supposed to be ordinary. I dropped Nick off at Rachel's. The kids wanted to play in the backyard. Rachel had errands. "Adam will stay with them," she said casually. Something in me whispered, "Just go, it means nothing." When I knocked, it was Adam who answered. Hair damp, skin fresh from the shower, wearing nothing but a robe. He didn't look surprised, just said, "Come in." And I did. We stood in the kitchen. The kids ran off. He poured wine. We said nothing important, not at first. But then he looked at me and said, "I know what you're feeling. It shows. You've never been good at hiding your eyes." I stayed silent, heart thudding. "I feel it too," he added. "I haven't told Rachel. Maybe I won't, but you need to know I can't pretend anymore." I opened my mouth to tell him it was wrong, that we weren't those people anymore. But then the door opened. Rachel's voice rang out, cheerful, unaware. I stood up. He put the glass down. I greeted her like nothing had happened, but something had. After that, he came by more often. Alone. He brought Ella over, offered to take both kids out, just the three of us. And the silence between us grew louder. We didn't cross the line, but we stood at its edge. Until one night he came alone, no children, no explanations, and I didn't say no. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't tender. It just happened, like muscle memory, like nothing had ever changed. I cried once he fell asleep. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Rachel, he didn't answer. In the morning, he kissed my forehead. "I'll come back," he said, "but if you can't, I'll understand. I just want to be around, for you, for him. I won't claim to be his father, but if you ever need me, I'll be here." Then he left, back to his life, his family, and I stayed, in the stillness, in the after. Adam tried a few more times to weave himself into my days, lingering when he dropped Ella off, sending short, hesitant messages, finding excuses to stop by alone. Each time his eyes carried that unspoken request, just once more. And then, suddenly, he stopped, as if a thread had snapped. He folded himself back into his family life, and I was left holding the silence, the emptiness. I didn't look for him, didn't write. I kept still, quietly gathering the shards of my heart. Nick noticed nothing. His world was still full of childhood games and bright afternoons. But at night I lay awake again, not from longing this time, but from a growing, coiled fear. 2 pink lines. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding that slim piece of plastic, barely able to breathe. Pregnant. With him. With the man who had once betrayed me and was now betraying someone else. The man who was supposed to father only my son, now the father of another child. I laughed and cried at the same time. It was absurd. It was an ending and a beginning tangled together. I didn't know if I had the strength to walk through it all again. But I knew one thing, this was mine now. My body, my blood, my truth. And maybe one day it would be the truth I could no longer keep hidden. I told him. We met on a park bench, the children playing close by. "I'm pregnant," I said. His expression changed instantly. The warmth I once knew vanished. He looked at me as if I had spoken in a language that didn't belong to him. "Don't do this, Sarah," he said quietly, sharply. "Don't ruin my life. I already have one child. I won't acknowledge this one. I have nothing to do with it." The words cut me in half. I sat frozen, everything inside collapsing into a hollow pit. He stood, turned, and walked away. No goodbye, no regret, just gone. But I kept the baby. Not for him, for me. Because this was mine to carry, mine to protect. Months later, my daughter was born. She had my eyes, but his smile. The same smile that once pulled me into love and now sliced through me every time it appeared. I left, moved to another city far from the shadows and the pain. My children would never know the truth. For them, there would be no father. Only me. Years passed. Nick grew older, sharper, always asking questions. One evening, he looked at me with those searching eyes and said, "Mom, where's my dad? Does he know about me?" I couldn't hold back the tears. I wrapped him in my arms and whispered, "No, he doesn't know." Both truth and lie. And I wept because I could not say more. And in that moment I understood. My children would never know who their father was, because it was safer that way. Because only this way could I keep their hearts whole.